have the opportunity to introduce our first panel session titled Outlook for the Sector, which will be moderated by Toby Graham. He's the General Manager for China at ShineWing Australia. Toby plays a critical role in connecting our clients to real opportunity and resources in China and Asia more broadly. Toby has over 7 years experience living and working in mainland China. He has helped a number of Australian businesses engage in China, assisting with market research and access. He helps build brand awareness, distribution, localization, and provides solutions and connections to help further business interests and growth for Australian companies across China. So Toby, I hand over to you to kick off our first panel session.
Thanks, Matt, and thanks, Shadow Minister, for sharing those views on the importance of agri for Australia. Folks, I'd like to welcome you now to today's first panel, where we are going to present an outlook on the sector from experts in the field who are tuning in from across the region, the Asian region, obviously the most important region in the world for Australian agri and the engine of global economic growth moving forward. My name is Toby Graham. As Matt said, I'm the General Manager China for ShineWing Australia, coming to you here from the office here in sunny Shanghai. We've got quite a bit of content to get through today, so I'm going to assume that most people have been to quite a few webinars before. I'll keep the housekeeping very brief. 2 reminders, a Q&A button down the bottom of your screens, and I encourage you to fire in your questions throughout the session. And second, just a reminder that we'll be holding a Clink and Drink networking session at the end of today's content. So I hope you can join us for that too, 5:30 p.m. in Australia, 3:30 p.m. in China, and various other times throughout the world, depending on where you're tuning in from. As mentioned, we've gathered 3 experts and myself today to discuss some of the key trends and challenges for agri in the region. Each of our speakers is going to give you a short presentation on their area. So Krissada Jutimongkonkul, partner of ShineWing Thailand, will tell us what's happening in Thailand and Southeast Asia more broadly, followed by Mark Tanner, Managing Director of China Skinny, who will cover consumer insights in China. And then we'll hear from Dhruv Gupta, Director of International Business at ShineWing Hong Kong, who's going to talk about what's going on in Hong Kong, one of the world's foremost export destinations and an entrepot for East Asia, as well as India, where he's tuning in from today. So I'm going to rip through the first introduction so that we can get straight to our first speaker and into today's conversation. First off the rank, I'm going to invite Krissada to kick us off. Krissada is an associate of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, an associate of Chartered Global Management Accountants, CPA Thailand, an ASEAN CPA, and he is also a PhD candidate. Krissada, I don't know how you find the time for all of that. Nevertheless, excited to hand it over to you first if you are ready for us.
Okay, thank you, Toby. Okay, from my part, first of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Krissada Jutimongkonkul. I am partner of ShineWing Thailand. I will present you about Thailand agricultural business, which have 3 main aspects. The first section is current industry landscape. The agriculture accounts for roughly 8% of the total GDP. As you see in the pie chart, in the line graph, the country agricultural generated 1.3 trillion Thai baht last year and maintained a trade surplus in this sector for a very long time. We expect the surplus to continue. The table shows our top export items. The yellow rows mean that those particular items are both ranked highly for export and import. You may find that only fruit and chicken are 2 major items that we can increase the export last year. Most of the items on the import side seem to have gained more traction, which reflects also in the reduction of trade surplus in 2019. China is still our most important trading partner, both export and import. Totally, we exported 1.3 trillion Thai baht last year, while import 0.5 trillion Thai baht. Our aim to move forward from traditional farming 1.0 to be smart farming 4.0 that using innovation for cultivation, processing, and marketing. The example of the company that moving forward to 3.0 and 4.0 currently the large scale corporation only. The second session, the way forward to agriculture 4.0. 5 challenging characteristics for transitions are: 1. From based on the environment based to statistic and measurement based. 2. From low tech to high tech. 3. From volume based to value based. 4. From low cost of investment to high cost of investment. 5. From fragmented to integrated. To be more elaborative and focus on how the transition is to be scoped at this diagram. Start by identifying challenges, more categorize, enhance productivity, improve the standard, combine the rules and regulations, be prepared and proactive against threats and disruption. Frame to make clearer scope under 3 major parts as the sustainable complex, better supply chain management by clustering, promote more R&D. To achieve the outcome in 3 aspects, to match consumers' demand under consumption aspect, enhancing value added and uniqueness under innovation. Investment on combined knowledge, innovation, and marketing insight for better outcomes. The third section is challenges and opportunities. Focus on both short-term and long-term challenges. For short-term, as you can see at the below part of the slide, short-term in the second half of 2020, facing the farmers' income are expected to shrink by 0.7% year-on-year as per KBank research. For long-term, to consider between market and products, that how to penetrate and develop the market. And another angle is how to develop and diversify the products to gain more opportunities for trading produce and relevant products, and also professional services. Essence of my presentation, thank you very much. I will return microphone back to Toby.
Thanks very much, Krissada. Interesting to note all of those focuses there in Thailand. Krissada, there might be 1 or 2 questions for you on that when we get to the end, but we might press on. Folks, a reminder, if you've got questions, keep using that Q&A button, shoot them through, but I'm mindful of time, so let's move right along to our next speaker, which is Mark. Mark is the founder and managing director of China Skinny here in Shanghai, a company that has provided China-related research and growth strategies for hundreds of well-known brands and companies, and Mark's commentary regularly features in international media outlets. No doubt you may have seen him present or as a keynote speaker in various China-related fora before. Mark, looking forward to seeing what you've got in store for us today. Over to you now.
Thanks, Toby. I'll just get the screen on and fire away. So just to kick off, I think at a high level, the trade numbers look pretty good. In May, we were up 8% from Australia through to China. First half of the year, beef was up 3% year on year. But obviously everything's not so rosy at the moment. It was actually 30% down last month. And we saw 4 abattoirs that remain unopened, barley, etc. So there's some headwinds in there around trade, and a lot of that's obviously coming down to the geopolitical issues much more than coronavirus, which seems to be bouncing back in China. But one of the big things that we see at China Skinny is around consumer perception, and we recently ran a survey into perception around purchase intent from other countries, including China. And as you can see, China is significantly higher than any other country. Right now, there's quite a lot of nationalism happening in China. So consumers are much more, I guess, keen to buy their own products. A lot of that's coming through to geopolitical tensions. and other just concerns around products coming in from other countries and perhaps being having the virus on them. And recently there was some seafood, both from Norway and from Latin America, that on the packaging had some issues around which they think had coronavirus. So that's impacted some of the appetite for products from overseas. But obviously that's not going to last forever. Hopefully this virus will be contained in the foreseeable future. But for the meantime, that's kind of how we're looking. But I think it's really important to note also from a consumer perception how they're changing as a result of the virus. And we're seeing some real shifts in trends. Obviously health is huge. Things like immunity, vitamin C, and products that really prompt that, whether it be protein or citrus, are really going gangbusters right now. Consumers are spending more time at home, like everywhere, but now they are allowed out. They're still spending time at home. They've invested in things such as cooking, stovetops, air fryers, things like that they haven't had in the past. So they're looking for formats that are more appropriate for cooking at home and ready to cook. Things like that are really going well. Everything related to fitness and well-being, and whether that be food and protein type products. And we're seeing category specific changes. We did some work around COVID with Colgate and found that mouthwash was really booming because people were wearing face masks and they're breathing and they're smelling their breath and they're like, oh, maybe I need to get some freshener. So that's a positive from the result, but just some changes in the dairy category. We've seen a lot more cream as people are baking more at home. Things like pets, and again, that's related to some of the food and beverage, ag products, meat, etc. And reflection and purpose. They're all changing as a result of people spending time. Similarly, there's been a real pivot to e-commerce, and particularly around food. So we're seeing more infrastructure, more cold chain, etc. Also, the breadth of people consuming is getting older. In the past, it's been purely or mainly young and in high tier cities, but they were unable to purchase with the lockdown. So now you're getting more older people in lower tier cities buying online. And we've seen that maintained ever since things have turned back to normal. And more diverse commerce. They're not just buying through those mainstream Alibaba, JD type platforms, but social commerce, community commerce, live streaming, all these different ways they're looking to buy. And quickly, just there's been a real shift online. You're seeing a lot of brands now that have traditionally sold offline are moving online. You'll see more brick and mortar consolidation, very fragmented at the moment, but a lot of companies are hurting with less foot traffic. So a lot of those online companies are swooping in and getting deals. We've seen a few, and there'll probably be more, and incorporating some of their technology for new retail, etc. Some companies have shifted from supplying trade more to retail. Again, that's made the retail space more crowded just because less people were dining out, etc. And then relevant particularly for Australia, the Daigou trade, the shoppers that will go onto the Woolies and Coles and clear out the infant formula, etc., and tell all their friends and family about how great Australian products are and send some back. Because of less tourists and students, that's obviously impacting those products. Those are the big changes we've seen, and hopefully we can talk more about it in the Q&A.
Excellent. Thanks, Mark. Plenty of takeaways there for the audience, and good also to see that we're addressing the elephant in the room in terms of rising nationalism and how that might affect consumer preferences around the world. A few questions coming in for you, Mark, and we'll try and address those at the end. But pressing on, folks, for our final presentation, which comes to you from Dhruv Gupta in India. Dhruv is the Director of International Business at ShineWing Hong Kong, where he's usually based. Dhruv has over 2 decades of experience working in around the world and has been based in Hong Kong, UK, Canada, Australia, and India. Dhruv, that's a lot of area to cover. I hope you can squeeze it all into 5 minutes. Let's see how you go. Over to you, mate.
Thanks, Toby. I hope you can hear me.
Yep, hearing you fine.
Okay, great. So, when I got this topic, Toby, I thought I will be allowed hours to present this. It's such a vast topic, and currently I've tried to steer away from this statistics about India. I will not be presenting Hong Kong at the moment because Hong Kong is basically a trading center. It's not huge on agricultural production. So just focusing on India and keeping the introducing India and what it is at this moment, agriculture in India. The population of India is obviously 1.38 billion, which is a number, a lot of people to feed. And so agriculture assumes a lot of importance. We have quadrupled in sort of 80 years, which means we have continuously rising population to feed. We are a 3.2 trillion economy. We do well in terms of our agricultural area or arable area. Having said that, the agriculture is still only 16% of the GDP. This particular picture just shows the number, the countries and the agriculture that sort of makes a contribution to these countries. And India stands at between 10 to 20%. I think there is a lot of prospect for India to grow in agriculture. It has done well so far. It is the largest producer of milk, pulses, and jute, and it is the second largest producer of rice, wheat, sugarcane, groundnuts, and a few others. Just to put it into perspective, India is the world's top producer of tractors. India has the largest cattle population, and India has been one of the top exporters of beef by volume. So we've done well again in terms of, because we are a hugely populated country, and we, after independence, we were a poor country. From the 1970s, where we almost 55% of our population was under the poverty index of the World Bank, we have reduced that number to 25%, despite a twofold rise in the population. We did face ship-to-mouth situations and famines initially in the early 1960s, and our policymakers and economists realized that everything else can wait, but food cannot. India now is a net exporter. However, agriculture still remains at the subsistence level, which can probably grow, and India can become more commercial in agriculture. These are just some numbers. We export about 40 billion, we import about 20 billion. So how did we do it? We obviously had, initially adopted the Green Revolution. We used the miracle seeds produced by Sir Norman Borlaug, and we were able to feed our people starting the early 1970s. We then had some other revolutions, for example, for milk, for fisheries. However, the government continued its protectionist approach because the prime objective of the government was to address widespread poverty and food security. So this was a brief introduction about where we stand in terms of agriculture and what can we do now in terms of reducing our challenges and converting them into opportunities. So India has already started using AI, big data, and drones. But through the doing the scientific analysis of soils and the land. Indian government is taking a lot of steps in promoting the agriculture, and it has recently deregulated a lot of agricultural commodities that will allow the farmers to get better prices and sell without trade barriers. The government and the private players have started a lot of e-commerce platforms for the farmers. And India is developing, infrastructure at the farm gates to help the farmers sell their produce where they grow. India has set up a $13 billion fund for infrastructure, agri-infrastructure, which is going to give a boost to the Indian agriculture. And these measures are pretty recent. We are working on, farming as a service model. There are a lot of private players who have come in and, they invest into machines and critical equipments, which marginal farmers cannot afford, but then they allow them to use it on a pay-for-use basis. And this model is becoming quite successful in India. India is lending a lot of financial resources to its farmers. Again, as I said, soil analysis is being done so that we don't overuse water and fertilizers. There is programs for optimized irrigation systems. And, we're trying to bring small farmers together and address their problems through the cooperatives. This picture as it shows, I think India should aim at moving from subsistence farming to sustainable farming, which would obviously include the commercialization of agribusiness. Having said that, we should look at the carbon footprints and the greenhouse gases so that we don't contribute too much there. Our technology that we adopt should look at these aspects so we can reduce the climate pressures. So the challenges exist, and yet India is a huge market with varied income of its population, and it offers a lot of opportunities for the agribusiness traders. I would just touch on the COVID-19 pandemic, and India did face a lot of issues when lockdowns happened. Some of our farmers had difficulties in selling their produce, which was an important, March and April was an important time for them. However, we have emerged okay after that period, and at the moment we witnessed a 6% growth in agriculture in the last quarter, which is basically ending March. The Prime Minister of India has also come up with a lot of packages to provide relief to the farmers. I think I'll stop at that and probably, we can take more questions as the session progresses.
Thanks very much, Dhruv. Yes, we are running out of time, so I'm going to jump straight into chat mode here and try and get into one or two of these questions that have come through in the panel. Dhruv, stay on the line. We might start with you, and I might switch to Hong Kong. Sorry to press you before, and thanks for providing the update on India. Questions come in regarding the current social dynamics happening in Hong Kong and how is that going to affect the backdoor supply into mainland China with fresh fruit. Do you want to have a crack at that, Dhruv?
Yes, so I think, one aspect I can see is that the Chinese government would probably not allow a lot of backdoor. I think it's already been pushing against these measures. So I think, and with the new changes coming in, I think Hong Kong traders would be careful in using backdoor channels for supplying to China. So we can probably see a bit of a decline in the trade via Hong Kong, and we might have to see, Hong Kong would probably need to find new ways of developing their own trade.
Right.
Also, worth noting right now around the with COVID, it's a lot harder to get things in and out of Hong Kong to China.
Right, just logistics. And with more biosecurity, which brings us poignantly to a next question, Mark, and I'm going to switch over to you. So the questions come in regarding things like biosecurity, supply chains, self-sufficiency, and how all of these kind of worries during COVID might affect consumer preferences and the like. What's the status with Australian agri in China at the moment? What's the attitude, if you could just elaborate on some of the things you touched on?
Yeah, it's a big question. I think no one should be under any illusion that the tension isn't from consumers towards Australian products, but Australia isn't alone. It feels like the geopolitical tensions are getting worse everywhere. America's obviously doing a lot of not great stuff. UK recently with Huawei and the Hong Kong and a lot of other countries, New Zealand even. So there's a lot of tension right now everywhere. Australia does retain an incredible reputation around the quality and purity of food, and the fact that the COVID has been contained a lot better in Australia than other countries also reflects well on imported products. But it doesn't counter. There is definitely a rise in preference for Chinese products than there was before. So there's definitely, that's a shift, but Australia still bodes pretty well overall.
That's good to hear, some silver lining. We might get through all of this. Look, folks, we do have quite a few more questions that have come in, but I have been told that we're running out of time. So I'm going to have to cut us short, unfortunately. But if you want a chance to ask more questions one-on-one with the Clink and Drink, join us at the end. Our speakers, our panelists will all be there, so you can ask them directly. On behalf of all of us for the first session, I'd like to thank you for tuning in, and also thank our panelists for donating their time and providing their insights. I'll hand it back to today's chair, Matt Schofield, to introduce the next session. Have we got Matt there? We do. Matt, over to you.
Yep, thanks, Toby. And obviously, thank you to Krissada, Mark and Dhruv as well. And just sort of seeing some questions come through there for Mark around going to China. And I think, you know, for everyone on the call, China Skinny is a must access / must read group if you're looking to go into China. So please do reach out to Mark. He's got a lot of great insights around how to enter the China market.